I would love to maybe track back a little bit to how you had your first exposure to heroin.
Yeah, I mean, my first experience was it was a spot in Shepherd's Bush that I lived in South Africa Road. I was thinking, like, this is fucking great. I mean, I was like, because I'd kind of been listening to, if you listen to Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground and all that sort of stuff, you're into the enigma of it all, and you're obsessed and seduced with it. And my mate and I would just were just thinking, like, we'll have some of that. So we basically did, and we just kind of sort of joined in. Maybe about the first 3 or 4 months. I was doing it reasonably regularly, not compulsively, because I had a notion then that nothing this good comes without a price. I got into basically writing stories. The stories, they became Trainspotting.
It starts with just taking that leap.
Man, you have to work hard. You have to be incredibly smart.
Choose something that even if it fails, you are going to be proud of it.
Doesn't matter how badly you got beaten and down.
Be kind, be kind, be kind.
Become a better person, a better leader, a better business.
Go with your gut. I'm Samuel Donner, and this is Finding Founders. We'll get back to the podcast right after this break. Another Bite, hosted by John Dick, Jory Monroe, Leslie Green, and Ariel Boswell, is brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. Each week, they break down an episode of everyone's favorite business television show, Shark Tank, offering their own unique thoughts, spin-off companies, critiques, and even talk with some folks who pitched the sharks themselves and live to tell the tale. From squatty potties to mensch on a bench, and even that weird golf club that you'd be into, like that's a serious invention. I was just watching the video earlier. It's crazy. Another Bite takes a fresh look at some of your favorite episodes and even more importantly, answers what these entrepreneurs are up to now. So if that sounds interesting to you, listen to Another Bite wherever you get your podcasts. And now, back to the podcast. Now we know Irvine Welsh for his enormously popular novels such as Trainspotting, The Acid House, Filth, Porn Glue, and Skagboys. His first work has since been adapted into the cult classic 1996 film Trainspotting, consistently ranked as one of the top 10 British films of all time and recently followed by its 2017 sequel, T2 Trainspotting. Whether Irvine is switching between the punk and disco subcultures of 1980s London, releasing the most shoplifted novel in British publishing history, or learning the difference between Bay Area and Appalachian meth, his writing journey has been anything but traditional. But before he transformed Scotland's literary scene, and before he got on and off heroin, Irvine was a little kid with a rebellious streak, moving from one tenement flat to another. I want to go back before all of this and talk a little bit about where you grew up and some of your earliest memories.
Right. My earliest memory was we lived in a tenement flat in Leith, and I think it was Prince Regent Street when I was a kid. I was a toddler, and this floor was very. It took me a while to learn to walk because the floor was very sloping. There was subsidence in the buildings, and the floor sloped a bit, so it kind of I wasn't too steady on my feet, and still not too steady on my feet right now. So not a lot of change there. And then when I got to about 3, 4, we moved to, and we lived in what were called the prefabs, which were prefabricated houses. You just built them on the back and took them on the back of a lorry and stuck them down in these fields across the road from the gasworks as they were then. In Leith was the old port of Edinburgh, and it was built around the shipyards and the docks and the merchant fleet. There's not a lot of street life. When I was a kid, there was a lot of street life there because, kids would go out and play and just hang around. And when you got older, you'd hang around the streets, and it was very social. It was it was like the weekends were very busy. Kids would be playing outside, playing football in the street. You see guys, you see the old guys coming back from the pub and all that, and maybe singing and all that, and having a bit of a laugh, or maybe coming back from the football and kind of Hibs Hearts and shouting at each other and all that on the way home. So it was quite a vibrant community, and it's a general thing, that kids are much more oriented towards kind of the internet and their bedrooms, that they don't really collectively kind of hang around in the streets together.
But like sometimes I feel like not everyone would want you to play football in the streets. Can you tell me about your maybe first criminal record?
Yeah, I mean, I got arrested at 8 years old, and there's a bunch of us. We just moved into Muirhouse from Pilton, and we were kicking a ball around. There wasn't any no ball game sign, but we just started kicking this ball around, and then a couple of police cars came down, took all our details, and we thought that was the end of it. They were just giving us a telling off, but we got a summons from the court. We're at the Supreme Court at 8 years old, and we were formally charged, and we went up and we were given a technical admonishment by the judge, but it meant we had criminal records. It meant we had that was on our record as a convicted criminal, basically at 8 years old.
What did you think of that when you were a kid? Like, do you remember thinking anything about that?
In retrospect, it was one of the best things that happened to me because it gave me a bit of attitude, basically. And it was, it's like I think you can either sort of, when something like that happens as a kid, you can either doff your cap or you can kind of be resistant to it. You can get a bit of you can think, fuck all you bastards, like it's like I'll do exactly what I like when I like, and I'm not putting up any fucking shit from anybody.
What does that resistance look like? Like when you say like resistance, like would you just get into trouble?
You just think, fuck that, I'm going to hang out, we're going to kind of cause havoc outside the library, we're going to sort of, we're just going to be general fucking little bad bastards in the scheme, and if there's anything we can see that we can steal, we'll have a go at stealing it, basically. What happens in that situation is you usually get another brush with the law, and then you kind of straighten out a bit, but I never did, I sort of was always fortunate and kind of quite sly and managed to avoid most of the contact with the police. If I say so myself, I was quite a gifted shoplifter.
And you also said, amongst like stealing and just causing trouble in general, it seemed with the sniffing glue, you were also experimenting a little bit with like mind-altering drugs and substances. Was that something that you were aware of, and like what was that like in your community?
Yeah, and it's like that sort of I mean, the culture when I was growing up and I was in my teens and I was getting to that kind of sort of stage where you're looking for drinking possibilities and all that, there was it was drink. It was like cider and sort of kind of cheap wines and all that were the rather than drugs. There was no, when I was very young, and like 16, 15, 16, just getting really interested in intoxication. There was no drugs at all in the scheme, not even cannabis or anything like that, which is completely unknown. I was 16 and I had terrible, I left school with no qualifications at all, but for some reason, I don't know why, I got a job as an apprentice television mechanic, TV and radio mechanic, which I had absolutely no aptitude for. It was just one of those bizarre kind of things that they just thought, well, I don't know what the line of thought was. It was probably like I was always able to verbalize quite well and to kind of talk a good fight. So they must have kind of said something really, that's not a really stupid line of thought, like, you seem quite intelligent, therefore you should be suited for a science type of thing, without any recourse to any kind of qualifications or grades that I had or whatever. I enjoyed kind of being with other apprentices and hanging out, having a laugh, and it was a crash course in more alcohol kind of Fortunately, very fortunately for me, is that I had an auntie and uncle who lived in London. They lived in West London and Southall. I'd been going down there in the summers. And then when the whole punk thing kicked off, the explosion of punk rock, like, led by, bands like the Pistols and the Clash, but also just about every band at the time, like, Susie and the Banshees, the Subway Sect, just loads and loads and loads of really kind of crazy stuff basically was kind of happening. Loads of bands were playing, everybody was in a band, and I was down in Southall and I was getting the 207 bus into Soho practically every night and hanging out at places like the Marquee and the Vortex and having the time of my life, you know, meeting all these people from all over.
Why do you think the music drew so many people to it? And also, like, what was the thought process and the opinion of people maybe outside that scene? Like, what was like maybe like the working man's or like the posh people's perception of this music that was going on?
It's that thing, every intergenerational thing, nobody actually gets it at all. It just seems a really strange kind of alien thing. The dress was different. It's like my dad's generation. They always dressed up to go to the pub, even if they're just going to the pub with their mates. They'd put a suit on and all that kind of stuff. Whereas we were dressing in kind of like leather jackets and sort of safety pins and sort of rolling around the dog shit and everything. You know, we're just trying to be as objectionable, as obnoxious as possible. And then it was like, it was a great education for about 6 months. But I was interested in, I loved disco music, I loved dance music, I loved disco as well. And I thought punk and disco were just completely, you were either in one cult or the other. They were complete anathema to each other. And I loved getting talked up and going to disco. I was like, I'd have a kind of almost like a John Travolta type kind of white suit on kind of on Friday night, and I'd be going out, and then Saturday night it'd be the football, then going to some punk club and all that, you know. So it was kind of, to me it's like you couldn't really get away with that in Edinburgh, because people would see you in Edinburgh and go like, I thought you were a fucking punk, look at you, fucking disco punks and all that. But you could in London, you could just, London, you could have any identity you wanted. You could mix and match. You could kind of, you could bounce around and you could say, well, I'm going to go to this soul club, or I'm going to be a mod just now for a few weeks and get into that, or I'm going to, I'm going to fire into punk, and it's like, so all this kind of stuff was available. London was this kind of cultural supermarket where everybody sort of came. And
did you feel like you needed to leave your to go to where the epicenter of punk was happening?
I didn't really think of it that way at the time. I mean, it was massively beneficial, but I think all travel is beneficial for you. I think it's really good to get away from your home environment, because you appreciate it so much more when you go back. I mean, everybody, when you're younger, you grow up and you think your place is really boring and all the action is happening somewhere else. And then you actually realize, well, where you come from is actually the most fucking weird, eccentric place ever, and it's just this rich tapestry of madness that you really enjoy kind of re-exploring. But you don't really feel that way at the time when you're young. It just becomes like, I want to see something else. I've seen this, I want to see something different. I've done a lot of kind of crap jobs in London. I was working on building sites. I was working, I was working at hotel kitchens, doing portering. I worked at the Savoy for a while. And then I was living for the evening. You're living for the evening when you go out to a gig or go to see a band or go to a club. And that was it. That was all that I really wanted, basically. I just wanted to enjoy sort of going out.
I would love to maybe track back a little bit to how you had your first exposure to heroin.
Yeah, I mean, my first experience was, it was a squat in Shepherd's Bush that I lived in South Africa Road. I was thinking, like, this is fucking great. I mean, I was like, because I'd kind of been listening to, if you listen to Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground and all that sort of stuff, you're into the enigma of it all, and you're obsessed and seduced with it. And my mate and I would just sit there, we're just thinking, like, we'll have some of that. So we basically did, and we just kind of sort of joined in. Maybe about the first 3 or 4 months. So I was doing it reasonably regularly, not compulsively. Because I had a notion then that nothing this good comes without a price. There's going to be some kind of big decline.
What was that feeling?
Well, for me, it was I always felt when I had really good scars, it was like, when if you're really fucked, you're lying in the bath and you're just kind of, this is great, and everything is just so, I just felt like that, and with a tremendous sense of, an idea that everything was just great. Nothing can bother me. Nothing can touch me. All my concerns, all things about worrying about bills, about sort of kind of girlfriend issues and arguments and all that's gone. You know what I mean? It's like, the problem is it all comes back with a vengeance when you sort of, and you're in this, you're starting to get sick and in withdrawal. And that sort of, that carried on. Basically, I got I kind of started to up my intake, and it went on for, and I thought, I mean, to me, I thought it was only, I would only have classed myself as an addict for maybe about that one summer. And I don't think I was. I think I was deluding myself. I think probably for a bit longer.
So could you tell me how you actually got off heroin?
I just felt that one of the things that kind of, I noticed it was really affecting my life. It was like one of my favorite uncles had died, and then his wife died his wife died after. I remember I'm saying to my mum, coming up to Edinburgh, saying that was terrible, but Auntie Betty dying, like, I feel so sorry for Uncle Willie. He'll be absolutely gutted, like, because Uncle Willie died 6 months ago, so it's like, where the fuck were you? You've kind of, you've absented yourself from a whole life. You've not done it willfully. I've just been in a completely different place. And I thought, well, that's not acceptable to disappear. You've just gone away and you've left them. So what are you doing? You're just living this selfish, narcissistic kind of smackhead life where you're sitting on a mattress talking shit about all the great albums that you'll make and the great films that you'll write and the great books that you write and all that. Just all fucking bullshit. Get off your arse and get off the drums and do it. So I think that I didn't really get on with. I tried reduction cures and methadones and rehabs and all that kind of stuff, and I just got bang, stop, do the cold turkey, get it out of your system, and once you get 2 or 3 weeks done, you know you've cracked it, you've got past it, and for me it was like there was absolutely no desire to go back. It was just like something that it was almost like, when I see a lot of my mates now, they're getting they're getting to the age where a lot of them are getting things wrong with them. They're getting all these kind of hip replacement stuff and all that. And to me, it was like kind of going in for a hip replacement. Like, I've got to get this fucking thing done, but I can't be bothered. I'm doing other things and all that, but it's sore and it's bugging me. It's holding me back. So I'll just go in and do it. And that's really how I felt about it. I just want to get this done and get out the fucking road, basically.
We'll get back to the podcast right after this break. Are you sick and tired of wasting all your time on tedious tasks like writing reports, writing blog posts, trying to personalize countless prospecting emails? Like when you change that first sentence and it's just like, oh, this is a new email. Well, guess what? You don't have to do any of that anymore because these new AI tools are going to blow your mind. I don't know if you've been playing around with ChatGPT. Insane. People think they're coming for your jobs, but I think they're going to make your job a lot easier. And that's why HubSpot is introducing their newest AI tool, Content Assistant and ChatSpot. Content Assistant uses the power of OpenAI's GPT-3 model to help you create content outlines, outreach emails, and even web page copy in seconds. And in case that wasn't enough, they created ChatSpot, a conversational growth assistant that connects to your HubSpot CRM for unbeatable support. Head to HubSpot.com/artificial-intelligence to get early access today. And now, back to the podcast. Can you tell me about the death of your father too?
I mean, these things like the death of a parent, just all for everybody is a terrible thing. It's one of the marker events of your life, and I think you have to allow yourself to be changed by it. You have to sort of accept that it's changed, and it's changed you. I think it kind of did two things for me really. It sort of it made me get myself together. Realize that life is short, basically, and it can be very, very short. My dad was kind of early 50s when he died, and now, at the time I thought that was quite old, but now I think it's no age at all, it was, so I think what happens is that the interesting thing is that I think it kind of, I think it made me quite fearless. I think, when I was in my 20s, I thought, fuck, my dad's dead. This is a terrible thing. How am I going to get past this? And I thought, well, I can really do what I like now. I won't, instead of, I won't be in a position whereby I can disappoint them in any way or can hurt them in any way by what I do. And it did make me quite fearless and quite reckless. And I think that recklessness was channeled into a kind of acting out hedonism for a while. And then I thought, well, it's like I kind of feel that what would he want me to do? How would he want me to be, basically? And he'd want me to try and maximize my potential. I've got to make that into a driving force in my life. I've got to try to do something creative. And it fed into the music, and I really tried hard with the music, but it just never took off. But fortunately, what did come out of the music was that I was writing ballads, and I just thought ballads are just stories. Just get rid of the music and focus on the actual stories themselves. So I got into basically writing stories, and the stories, they became Trainspotting.
How do you think about actually making this into something that will reach people?
Yeah, I think I've got people like Duncan and Kevin and Barry to thank for that, because they all started publishing books, and they were kind of it was a big thing about a Scottish Renaissance in literature. And Kevin had this thing that he had all this performance stuff, open mic kind of stuff and all that. I would go up and perform bits of the stuff that I'd written. And everybody was saying, this is really good, this is good shit and all that. This is like really kind of something different to what we've been used to seeing. To publish little bits of stories in different magazines. And he'd seen some of them and he said, have you got a novel? And I kind of lied. I said, yeah, I've got a novel. So I thought I'd better get one now. So I smashed out this book, and I didn't know. You're supposed to have 100,000 words in a novel. I had 300,000. So I just chopped out the middle part, and I wrote a heist ending on it. And it was just an accident, really, because I had all the origin stories of how they got to that point. That became Skagboys. And the later stuff, because, this stuff I've still got kicking around. But the bit in the middle was great because it just went right into their lives without explaining anything about how they got to that point. And I think it was quite an unsettling thing for the reader to be pushed into this world that they knew was there, but they didn't really have much in-depth knowledge of what went on there. Didn't really know if it would work or not. I just wanted to get the thing done because, and it came, I think I put it in 1991, and it came out in 1993, which was like. And I thought, nobody's going to read this book. It was a kind of novel of the late 80s, basically. It was a kind of 80s heroin novel, and now it's like 93, it's coming out. I just thought, nobody's going to be interested in it. It's going to be old hat. But thankfully, I was wrong. Big interest in it right from the start.
When do you start seeing that it might be successful?
I think that, you get the sort of royalty checks every 6 months. And the first couple were pretty small. It was just like, I thought, I'm going to make a bit of pin money here. And it's like, the first one was about kind of 500 quid or something like that, which is quite a bit of money back then. It was a nice little kind of thing, And then the next one was a couple of grand. And then the next one was 8 grand. And then it was like kind of, it was 16 grand. And then it was like, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I remember I got one for £500,000 came through, and I just thought, fuck, this is great.
How did that deal start?
Well, yeah, they just got in touch. And I was living in Amsterdam at the time, and they had done Shallow Grave, and they sent me a screening of Shallow Grave, and I thought, well, the characters are a bit posh, but I like the energy. So I thought my characters and this energy, it would be a great transfer to cinema of that style, and I liked the way that they didn't see it as a sort of kind of piece of social realism. They didn't see the characters as victims. They saw it as a youth movie about people being young and being stupid. And that was what I wanted it to be about, and that they believed in the story and the way that it was constructed. So it was fabulous. It was great. It was a real kind of, it was a real meeting of the minds, really. It just worked. I got on like a house on fire with the three of them.
So you're working with the Trainspotting team for the film, and the budget is like relatively small, right? It's like $1.5 million. So when it opens, like, what are you expecting this film to do?
Then off guts of it, I thought, this is going to be fucking great. It's just going to smash everybody away, and I remember talking to Andrew, the producer, and he was going, no, well, if it does have as good as Shallow Grave, I'll be said, like, fuck Shallow Grave. It's going to blow all that shit away. This is going to go fucking molten. And the reason I said that is because there's such great performances and great energy, and it looked brilliant as well. And that's the thing that's like, and it was so visually creative too, and I think the great thing about Daddy as a director is that he doesn't like to throw money at things. He doesn't like throwing money at problems. Because if you start throwing money at things and start CGI and everything and kind of special effects and everything, it all looks the fucking same. It looks like shit, basically, like high tech kind of stuff. But it's just not. There's no soul in it. There's no heart in it. And he was the very same with Trainspotting too. Sonny wanted to give us like something like kind of 30 million, because they're very nervous with small budget stuff because they're a corporation or whatever. And I think we managed to spend about 10 million, but you can never spend 30 million on a film like that without it being absolutely fucking shit.
It expanded to 357 screens, made $16.4 million in North America, had like one of the biggest grossing films of 1996. Like it was an insane release.
It did open up a lot to me, but I think you have to see the original writing and the original characters as something in themselves and away from the the whole kind of process of commercialization, because it's not really yours. You can't put a break on that kind of thing. It just it just slides into it. Everything finds its own level, and you don't want to be a curator of your own stuff. Basically, you don't want to take responsibility. It's responsibility. All this nonsense about keeping it real. You can't keep something real when it becomes big. Basically, it just evolves into what it is. All you can do is go back to the original text and say, this stands up as a novel.
So did all this success change how you viewed writing?
I think it did. It gave me confidence to try different things. And I was always, I was experimenting quite a lot with different types of fiction, with the early books like Marble Stop Nightmares and Filth and all that. And I remember that I got quite arrogant and up myself for a bit. I had this, I wanted to do this experimental novel. I did all this stuff, like I kind of photocopied my gas bill about 20 times, and I got people to write these weird poems, and I spliced them into this, and I had this nonsense kind of, this nonsense novel, and I gave it to a publisher. He said, look, this is a pile of shit. I'm not fucking publishing it. Stop showing off. Write the fucking novel you want to write.
When he said that, what was your response initially?
I wanted to burst into tears, because you kind of think that, you believe your own propaganda, and you think that, fuck me, I can write anything, I can do anything. And you just, and what happens, I just completely lost focus. I just thought that I could do all I could, that I had some notion of what this was going to be, and it just didn't work out at all, So you have to be bold, and you have to be prepared to fail. Basically, I think I think failure is the most important thing you can embrace, because that's where you learn. You don't learn anything at all from success.
I feel like the way you research some of your stories is pretty interesting. And you were researching this show for HBO in West Virginia. Could you tell me about how you came up with the concept for that show, and then actually how you went in researching it?
We wanted to do something set in Ireland, and it was HBO was very, now everything's global, kind of global streaming platforms, but HBO kind of led the way, and it was a very much an American concern at the time. They basically moved this thing to the Appalachians, and we redid a kind of Hatfields versus McCoys type war between two families, but we would actually settle it with bare knuckle fights. That was the premise of the thing.
I remember the pre-interview you were talking about like hanging out with like crystal meth addicts.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, I remember going to this, I was in a small town in West Virginia, and I remember ended up going to this party, which was like a kind of mad, kind of sort of porch, basically a mad hillbilly party. You know, it was really, it was like kind of interesting to see really poor people in America, like Calcutta, like kind of poor white people, kind of, you know, kids walking around barefoot and all that. Really, really poor, this town. And it was like everything had been taken out of it. You know, all the forests had been taken away. It was all, you know, they had that open cast mining when they just cut the tumble and all that. And it was the whole place had been massively kind of colonized in a way. It had been a victim of kind of internal imperialism, strangely. And it was really, it was very much a big meth town, basically. And I went to this party, and everybody was doing meth and all that, and I was like, I don't want to fucking touch crystal meth, you know. And I'd done this. The last time I'd done it was years ago. It was in a bulletproof cruise in San Francisco, and it was like I was fucking wired for hours and hours, you know, sort of like I could barely, you know, I couldn't blink for hours, and I thought, I've got to take this because all these guys are expecting me to, you know, to do this, and they were going like, you know, fuck all that. I said, I had this in San Francisco. I'd done all this. But fuck all your hippie shit, boy. This is the best fucking shit you ever taken in your life. This is all hillbilly, homemade bathtub stuff. So they put this out, and I took this crystal meth, and it was like, you know, it was so fucking tepid compared to the San Francisco stuff that I had. I mean, I ended up taking loads of it just to try and get the same impact I got from the hippie stuff on the bulletproof clues.
So, like, is that what research usually looks like for you?
No, it's not really. I mean, one of the, you know, it's like, Twitter was great because it's like I used to have to spend a lot of time with fucking nutcases in pubs, and now you can just go online.
How do you find these people, though?
They find you. They find you. You can't, you know, it's like every fucking band in the world will find you if you've written a book like Trainspotting or whatever. It is, you know, and it's like you can go into somebody's feed on Twitter and you can see like a whole world of pain. You know, everybody just like trying to. We're bonding with these people because they support the same football team as us, and we're bonding with these people because they have the same kind of politics as us. And you go into this fucking crackpot world, just kind of going into their accounts and looking at their tweets and looking at who they're tweeting to and what they're tweeting about. And it's fucking great because you don't have to spend time with them in a bar having them fucking talking all this shit in your head. You can do it very selectively, and you can find you can create the most crackpot characters just from somebody's Twitter account.
Do you think you like look for those kind of those crazy experiences?
I'll tell you, I think when I was younger, you know, there was maybe again, it's so much about the subconscious. I never kind of thought of myself as a writer, but I did want to have experiences, basically. And I felt probably within just under the threshold of my consciousness, I felt that these experiences were going to do me good in some way. They were going to be something that I could make something out of. I could recount. I could understand the world a bit better. I could understand different characters in the world a bit better. I could construct a kind of fictional universe or a fictional place. That's your raw material as a writer. That's what you're working with. I taught in Chicago for 6 months. Remember saying to a lot of the young kids in the MFA program, saying like, you're wasting your fucking time. You know, get off down to Mexico and sort of, you know, steal a convertible, or just even mundanely just work in a bar or a cafe and all that. You're wasting your time here. You're wasting your parents' money, basically. Obviously, the dean at the university wasn't too happy. Getting people in the door and getting them to pay their money for this fees and all that stuff. Fair enough.
But getting back to your story, I'd love to maybe touch on what you are most excited for today.
I think I'm excited about the Trainspotting musical because we've actually made it darker than the book. If you know, I think because it's, you know, because it's a musical format, we have to play around with it a bit. We can't make it too cheesy. We have to make it quite hard edged. So I think that's something that really excites me. I'm working with Bret Easton Ellis on a radio show we're doing together, which is like, it's a kind of intergenerational war sort of thing. And that's really coming together quite well. I'm really enjoying the process of working with Bret. And I'm doing with, my long-term screen partner, Dean Cavan, and I are working with Jonas Ackerlund, who's a great Swedish director, another really good friend. And we're doing this thing about Berlin and the techno tribes of Berlin before the fall of the Berlin Wall and after the fall of the Berlin Wall. I'm doing a new book about, I've got all these stories, these kind of train-spotting stories, in between train-spotting and porno, about all these guys and what they're up to. And I've realized it's all about them basically trying to negotiate love, falling in love in their 20s and working out what they do about it and what their kind of, their views on it, all this are. So it's like it's a bizarre romance book about all these kind of characters, basically, but in a way that they're more emotionally exposed.
I think, like, to wrap up, like, if you were to give advice to someone who wants to be a writer, what advice would you give to someone at, like, the beginning of their writing journey?
I would say to them, like, you have to know yourself and know that you want to spend a lot of time on your own. You have to be enough of an egotist to really believe that what you say is important and other people are going to be interested. So that assumes quite a sort of narcissistic, egotistical thing. But you also have to get past yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to write anything good. You're just going to sort of write kind of self-aggrandizing nonsense, and you have to kind of really get past yourself to be a writer. And to do that, you've got to spend a lot of time on your own. You got to, And I've known so many people they've talked a great novel from a bar stool. They've talked a great screenplay from a bar stool, but you sit them down away from an audience, and they're completely fucked. They can't just concentrate. They just go to pieces. So you've got to know yourself. You're going to set yourself up for a world of pain if you can't sit down in a room yourself and just knock out page after page after page after page. And you have to be a bit of a boring fucker. You're in this world with all these people that don't exist, and you just have to get this out onto the page, and it can take a long time. You're taking yourself away from the real world, and I get anxious. I think I've got to finish this book because everybody's partying, it's festival season, having a great time and all that, and I'm sitting there being a boring fucker. But I love it, I love doing it, and you've got to have that. You've got to really have that in your arsenal.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, DM us at Finding Founders Podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Finding Founders is produced and hosted by me, Samuel Donner.
Our Chief of Staff and Operations is Jessica Lynn.
Our audio editing team lead is Adrian Tapia, with support from
Irene Van Berkel,
Matt Fernandez,
Renee Buchanan,
Sophia Donner,
David Saide,
Ashley Jimenez,
Nicholas Guzman,
Aaron Devereaux,
Sanessa Gisley,
and Lois Choi.
Our outreach and research lead is Kenny Ong, with support from
Sarah Hobson,
Charisse Tan,
Harushi Kanauchi,
Kristen Hagelin,
Aya Cortez,
and Valencia Lu.
Our writing team lead is Elizabeth Bowen with support from
Aiden Ashworth,
Nikki McCullough,
Sylvie Wang,
and Eric Mena.
Our design team lead is Shruti Ramanand with support from
Tiffany Dang,
Yao Liu,
and Dina Gabriel.
To see more of what we're up to, subscribe to our newsletter at findingfounders.co. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.